Earth's largest impact crater, still visible after 2 billion years, was more than a scar. It was a warning, a sleeping giant, and the key to humanity's survival in a universe that had already tried to erase them. The scar lay where maps said nothing important should exist. From orbit, it looked like a bruise on the planet's skin, an immense circular depression stretching hundreds of kilometers across ancient bedrock, its outline stubbornly visible despite 2 billion years of erosion, tectonics, ice ages, and extinction events. Forests bent around its rim. Mountain ranges broke and reformed at its edge, as if even geology had learned to go around it rather than erase it. Dr. Ilara Miles watched the live orbital feed in silence, arms folded tight against her chest. She had spent her career studying impact craters, run-of-the-mill cosmic accidents, scars left by indifferent rocks. This was different. The algorithms didn't know how to classify it. The crater's geometry was too perfect, its internal density too wrong. Gravity behaved strangely inside its boundary, ever so slightly heavier, like the Earth was holding its breath there. 2 billion years, she whispered. And it's still fighting back. The discovery hadn't come from a telescope or a deep Earth probe, but from failure. A new generation of quantum gravimeters, designed to help stabilize orbital elevators, kept malfunctioning whenever they passed over the region. Instruments drifted. Time stamps desynced. One probe lost 12 milliseconds and never got them back. That was impossible. And humanity had learned long ago that impossible was just the universe daring them to look closer. When the first expedition descended into the crater, they expected radiation, pressure anomalies, maybe exotic minerals. They did not expect silence. No seismic noise. No tectonic hum. The planet, which normally sang endlessly beneath human instruments, went quiet inside the crater's heart. Even the wind seemed hesitant, skimming the surface like it didn't want to intrude. Commander Jax Moreno led the ground team, his exosuit crunching against stone older than multicellular life. "This place gives me the creeps," he muttered over the comm. "Feels like the Earth's watching us." Dr. Miles smiled thinly. "That's because it is." At the center, they found the anomaly, a vast subsurface structure revealed by LiDAR and neutrino scans, buried deep beneath kilometers of compressed rock. Not debris, not molten chaos, something ordered, something intact. The crater wasn't just an impact site. It was a containment zone. As drilling commenced, history unfolded layer by layer. The impactor that had struck Earth 2 billion years ago had not been a random asteroid. It had arrived at relativistic speed, carrying mass energy far beyond what should have shattered the planet entirely. Simulations showed that Earth should have cracked open, oceans boiled away, atmosphere stripped into space. Instead, life went on. The deeper the team dug, the more impossible it became to ignore the truth. The crater was the only reason Earth had survived. When the drill finally breached the inner chamber, reality bent. Sensors spiked. Gravity inverted for half a heartbeat. Commander Moreno was thrown against the wall as his suit screamed warnings, stabilizers firing wildly. Inside the chamber floated a lattice of black gold material, suspended without support. It pulsed faintly like a sleeping heart. Symbols crawled across its surface, rearranging themselves in response to human presence. Dr. Miles felt tears sting her eyes. It's still active. The structure was not a weapon, at least not in the way humanity understood weapons. It was a failsafe. A planetary-scale shock absorber built by a civilization so advanced it could predict the emergence of intelligent life and choose to spare it. Or so they hoped. As data streamed in, the implications grew heavier. The lattice had absorbed the impact's energy, converting it into a stabilized space-time anomaly, one that anchored itself to Earth's mantle. The crater was the surface expression of that anchor, a wound that could never fully heal because it was holding something together beneath it. Earth wasn't lucky. Earth had been chosen. That realization rippled outward, igniting debates across the solar system. Some called it divine intervention. Others called it a trap. Military analysts worried the system could fail, or be triggered. Philosophers asked whether humanity owed its existence to alien hands. Dr. Miles had a simpler thought. If something hit us that hard, she said during the emergency council, and this system saved us, then the universe is far more hostile than we ever imagined. Commander Moreno leaned forward. And we survived anyway. That was the part that mattered. The crater stood as proof that Earth had endured an extinction-level strike meant for something else, or perhaps meant as a test. Against physics, against probability, against cosmic indifference, the planet had held together long enough for humans to rise, look back at the scar and finally understand it. The crater was not a symbol of weakness. It was a monument to survival. 2 billion years ago, something tried to erase Earth from the cosmic ledger. Failed. And now, standing at the edge of that ancient wound with fusion reactors humming and stars within reach, humanity was ready to find out why, and what else in the universe believed Earth should never have existed in the first place. A weapon older than humanity. The first warning did not come as an alarm. Came as a pattern. Dr. Rhea Kincaid noticed it while reviewing background noise from the crater's subsurface sensors. Tiny fluctuations in neutrino flow, repeating at intervals too precise to be natural. At first, she assumed a calibration error. Then the intervals shortened. Then the pattern responded when the team increased power to the scanners. Something down there was listening. "Shut it down," she said quietly. Too late. Across the globe, instruments buried within the ancient impact zone woke up like old nerves suddenly remembering pain. Magnetic fields twisted. Gravity dipped and rebounded. Satellites adjusted orbit without command. For 12 terrifying seconds, Earth's rotation slowed by a fraction of a percent before stabilizing again. The crater, silent for 2 billion years, had acknowledged humanity's presence. Commander Jax Moreno received the alert while already suited up, helmet tucked under one arm. He didn't ask if the team was going back in. He asked how fast they could descend. Because the data was clear now. What lay beneath the crater was not merely a containment lattice. It was a system. Layered. Purpose-built. And at its core, buried deeper than any human drill had ever reached, was something that had only one plausible interpretation. A weapon. Not a bomb. Not a gun. A civilization-ending mechanism, designed to operate on timescales measured in geological eras. It wasn't meant to destroy planets outright. It was meant to wait, to observe, to identify emerging intelligence, and then to erase it. This thing was never supposed to fire on impact, Dr. Kincaid explained as the drop craft plunged through kilometers of reinforced rock. The impact was just the delivery system. The weapon was meant to sleep until the planet grew. Interesting. Moreno exhaled slowly. So we tripped its motion sensor. Essentially. The chamber they reached this time was deeper, darker, and far more hostile than before. Space twisted subtly inside it. Light bent. The black gold lattice from the upper layers now pulsed with sharper intensity, its symbols no longer passive but sequenced, forming cascading lines of logic older than human mathematics. At the center hung the core. It resembled a fractured sphere, kilometers wide, held together by fields that violated several laws of physics humanity was quite fond of. Energy flowed into it from the planet itself, geothermal, magnetic, gravitational, drawn in so slowly that it had taken billions of years to reach operational thresholds. The weapon had been charging since before trees existed. "This is extermination tech," whispered Lieutenant Hannah Solis, her voice barely audible over the hum that resonated in bone rather than air. "Who builds something like this?" "Someone who lost a war," Moreno said. "Or planned to." The weapon's purpose became horrifyingly clear as the AI translated fragments of its logic. It didn't target cities or species. Targeted probability. Once activated, it would subtly destabilize spacetime around a developing civilization, increasing the likelihood of catastrophic failures. Volcanic chains, asteroid impacts, runaway climate shifts, pandemics. Nothing obvious. Nothing traceable. Extinction made to look like bad luck. Humanity had unknowingly grown up inside its kill zone. And now, for the first time in 2 billion years, the system had detected technological intelligence reaching the threshold it was designed to eliminate. Activation countdown. 97 hours. Back on the surface, panic rippled through governments and orbital habitats alike. Some demanded the weapon be destroyed at any cost. Others argued it was too dangerous to tamper with. Detonating it might finish what the impact had failed to do. Dr. Kincaid disagreed with all of them. "This system is ancient," she said during the emergency assembly, eyes blazing. "It's not infallible. It's been running on assumptions made by a civilization that never accounted for us." Moreno volunteered before she finished the sentence. The plan was insane, reckless, and very human. Rather than destroy the weapon, the team would enter it, physically interface with the core, map its logic pathways, and sever its targeting criteria. If they failed, the planet might fracture. If they succeeded, Earth would no longer be prey. Inside the core, time itself stuttered. The exosuits struggled to maintain synchronization as gravity pulled in conflicting directions. Moreno felt memories bleed into one another, childhood blending with battlefield training, as if the weapon were sampling his mind. It wasn't hostile yet. It was curious. Dr. Kincaid connected the quantum interface, hands shaking but steady enough. "It's trying to classify us," she said. "It doesn't recognize individuality. It thinks we're a single adaptive system." Moreno grinned. "Then let's show it what kind." They fed the weapon something it had never encountered before. Human chaos. Art. Music. Records of wars ended not by extinction but by stubborn survival. Proof that intelligence did not always expand cleanly or predictably. The system hesitated. For the first time in 2 billion years, its logic loop stalled. Countdown paused, midnight. Then, one final message burned itself into every screen on Earth. Target status. Invalid. Reason. Species demonstrates non-terminal resilience. The weapon power down. Not destroyed. Not captured. Defeated by being wrong. As the crater settled back into silence, Moreno looked out across the ancient scar and felt something close to awe. "So," he said softly, "the universe tried to erase us before we ever knew it existed." Dr. Kincaid nodded. "And it failed." The weapon beneath the crater remained. A reminder, a warning, and perhaps someday a tool. But humanity had crossed the line it was never meant to reach. A species old enough to be targeted. And strong enough to survive it. Heroes forged in the impact zone. They called it the impact zone, but to the people who went down there, it became something else entirely. Crucible. The crater did not welcome intruders. Tested them. Commander Jax Moreno felt it the moment his boots crossed the boundary. An invisible pressure, subtle but insistent, as if the planet itself were weighing his worth. His exosuit compensated automatically. Microthrusters adjusting, gravitic stabilizers humming. Even so, every step felt heavier than it should have. "Gravity's spiking again," Lieutenant Hannah Solis reported, her voice tight but controlled. Localized shear. Feels like the ground's trying to pull me sideways. Dr. Ilara Miles, walking between them, didn't slow. It's not random, she said, eyes flicking across her HUD. The distortions are patterned. Adaptive. Moreno snorted. So it's learning. Or judging, she replied. This third descent was the most dangerous yet. The weapon's partial shutdown had stabilized the core, but it hadn't rendered the surrounding systems inert. The crater was still alive with ancient mechanisms. Automated defenses that didn't fire bullets or beams, but manipulated physics itself. Gravity wells opened like sinkholes. Time dilation pockets stretched seconds into minutes. One misstep could trap a person in a relativistic eddy forever. That was why this team existed. They were humanity's best. Not because they were fearless, but because they knew fear and moved anyway. Solis led the advance. Her exosuit's adaptive limbs spidering across fractured stone as a gravity inversion snapped into existence beneath her. She pivoted midair, boots locking onto the ceiling that had briefly become the floor, then rolled back as reality corrected itself. Still alive, she said, breathless. Barely. Behind her, engineer Pavel Orlov deployed a swarm of drone beacons, each one sacrificing itself to map invisible forces. Half of them were crushed, stretched, or simply vanished, but the data they sent back lit up the team's displays with navigable paths. Paths only stable for 40 seconds at a time, Orlov warned. We moved together or not at all. Moreno didn't hesitate. Then we move. They advanced in bursts, sprinting through corridors that didn't exist until moments before, bracing against pressure that could flatten tanks. At one point, the floor dissolved into a lattice of light, revealing kilometers of open space beneath them. Solis froze, breath hitching. Moreno reached her, gripping her shoulder. Look at me, he said firmly. Not down. Me. She nodded, grounding herself, and stepped forward on nothing, trusting the suit, trusting the math, trusting the team. The lattice held. Every step deeper stripped away illusions. This wasn't a place humans were meant to survive. The alien systems were precise, elegant, utterly indifferent to biology. Any species built on efficiency alone would have failed here. Humans didn't run on efficiency. They ran on stubbornness. At the chamber known as the Maw, the crater struck hardest. A sudden temporal surge tore through the team, scrambling suit chronometers. Moreno felt his heartbeat stutter as memories tried to surface. Faces of fallen comrades, half-forgotten regrets, projected into his senses by the system's attempts to analyze threat profiles. It's in our heads, Solis gasped. Pulling emotional data. Dr. Miles forced herself upright, tears streaking across her visor as she stared down visions of Earth cracking apart. It thinks emotion is a weakness, she said. It's wrong. She opened a private channel to the team. Focus on each other. Anchor yourselves. This system doesn't understand connection. Moreno keyed his mic. You hear that? Too close. No heroes. We get through this together. They did. When Orlov slipped, caught in a localized gravity spike, Moreno anchored him with magnetic clamps, nearly tearing his own suit apart in the process. When Solis's stabilizers failed, Miles rerouted power manually, burning out half her interface and screaming through clenched teeth as neural feedback spiked. No one left anyone behind. At the heart of the zone, they reached the control nexus, a cathedral of impossible geometry, walls folding inward like petals of black gold light. The air, or whatever passed for it, vibrated with restrained power. This was where the alien system decided who lived and who never should have. And standing there, battered, bleeding, exhausted, humanity refused to bow. Orlov laughed, a raw, disbelieving sound. "You know," he said, voice shaking, "statistically, none of us should be here." Moreno looked around at his team. Scarred armor, shaking hands, eyes still burning with defiance. "Statistics don't like us," he said. "We keep ruining their predictions." They planted the human interface modules not delicately, not elegantly, but forcefully, driving anchors into alien architecture that had never been designed to accommodate flesh and blood operators. Sparks flew as systems protested, logic gates straining under inputs that didn't conform. The crater pushed back one last time. A massive gravity surge slammed into the chamber, pinning the team to the floor. Alarms screamed. Structural integrity plummeted. The planet itself seemed to reject them. Moreno forced himself up inch by inch, muscles screaming, suit screaming louder. "Not today," he growled. With a final heave, he triggered the override. Human code flooding alien logic, messy and redundant and beautifully inefficient. The surge collapsed. Gravity normalized. The chamber fell silent. They had done it. When the team finally emerged into daylight, the crater looked the same as it always had. Ancient, scarred, unyielding. But something fundamental had changed. For the first time in 2 billion years, the impact zone had been crossed not by accident or extinction but by choice. Human choice. News feeds would later call them heroes, pioneers, legends. But standing at the crater's edge, watching the sun rise over a wound older than humanity itself, Moreno felt something simpler. Pride. The crater had tested them with the full weight of an uncaring universe. And humanity had answered, not with perfection, not with elegance, but with courage, loyalty, and the refusal to quit. Forged in the impact zone, they proved what the cosmos was only beginning to learn. Humans don't survive because the universe allows it. They survive because they decide to. Turning the scar into a shield. For the first time since the weapon powered down, the crater changed. It wasn't dramatic. No earthquakes, no blinding light, but every sensor on Earth noticed it at once. The gravity anomaly that had plagued the region for centuries smoothed out, not vanishing, but settling into a controlled rhythm. The silence beneath the ground became structured, layered with signals that followed human logic instead of alien indifference. The scar was healing, not by closing but by transforming. Dr. Ilara Miles stood inside the newly designated Crater Control Complex, a city of steel, diamond composite pylons, and quantum towers anchored directly into bedrock that predated animal life. Above her, a holographic projection of the crater rotated slowly, overlaid with streams of data flowing in elegant, impossible arcs. "We didn't shut it down," she said softly. "We taught it to listen." What humanity had accomplished in the days following the mission defied every cautious doctrine ever written. Instead of dismantling the alien system or burying it deeper, they integrated with it. Carefully, relentlessly, with the same reckless creativity that had carried them into the impact zone in the first place. The alien lattice was not rewritten, it was reframed. Its core function had always been defense. Absorb catastrophic energy, stabilize spacetime, prevent planetary destruction. Its creators had simply aimed that protection inward, against emerging intelligence. Humanity aimed it outward. Commander Jax Moreno watched from the observation deck as orbital engineers aligned the first planetary-scale interface ring, an immense structure suspended above the crater like a halo. Fusion drives flared, adjusting its position with surgical precision. Below, the ancient scar pulsed faintly, responding as if recognizing a long-lost command structure. "Hard to believe this thing tried to kill us," Moreno muttered. Dr. Rhea Kincaid joined him, arms crossed. "It still could," she said. "That's why this only works if we stay better than it." The integration process was brutal. The alien system rejected clean code, optimized algorithms, and elegant logic trees. It responded only when fed redundancy, contradiction, and emotional weighting. Human traits it had once flagged as inefficiencies. Engineers learned quickly. They built interfaces that argued with themselves. AIs that disagreed loudly and constantly. Control systems that allowed human operators to override machine certainty with gut instinct and ethical failsafes. Where alien logic sought perfect outcomes, human logic insisted on acceptable ones. Slowly the crater adapted. The first test came sooner than anyone wanted. A rogue object, initially dismissed as a drifting mass of interstellar debris, entered the solar system at impossible speed. Its trajectory curved subtly, intelligently, as if testing defenses. Observatories went dark. Long-range probes vanished. It was not the first of its kind. It was the first to arrive after humanity had taken control. Panic surged through public channels, but the people inside crater control felt something new. Readiness. Threat vector confirmed, announced the hybrid AI overseeing the system, its voice layered with human cadence and alien precision. Probability of planetary impact. 87%. Recommended response. Dr. Miles didn't hesitate. Engage shield protocol. Full spectrum. Deep beneath the crater, the ancient lattice awakened, not as a weapon but as a guardian. Space-time folded subtly around Earth, not violently, but gracefully, redistributing gravitational stress, bending incoming trajectories just enough to matter. The interstellar object screamed as forces beyond its design tore it apart. Not with fire, but with math. Its kinetic energy bled away into the lattice, absorbed and stored, harmlessly diffused through the planet's magnetic field. From the surface, the sky glowed faintly, auroras rippling across latitudes that had never known them. Impact probability dropped to 0. Cheers erupted across Earth and its orbital habitats, but inside the control complex, silence reigned. Everyone was staring at the same readout. Energy reserves increased. The shield hadn't just protected Earth. It had grown stronger. Moreno let out a slow breath. So every time something tries to kill us, we get better prepared, Kincaid finished. The implications were staggering. The crater was no longer just a defense system, it was a message written in physics. Any civilization capable of launching extinction-level threats would now face a planet that adapted, learned, and remembered. Earth had become a fortress, not one built on walls or fleets, but on survival itself. There were debates, of course. Fear that humanity was painting a target on itself. Fear that power like this would corrupt. Fear that the scar might one day turn against its keepers. Dr. Miles acknowledged those fears. A shield doesn't make you invincible, she said during the planetary address. It gives you time. And time is what we use best. As the sun set over the crater, its ancient rim catching fire with gold and shadow, Moreno stood once more at its edge. 2 billion years ago, this place had nearly ended the world. Now it protected it. The universe had tried to erase Earth with overwhelming force. Humanity had answered by taking the wound, understanding it, and turning it into armor. The scar remained, visible from orbit, visible from history, but it no longer spoke of vulnerability, spoke of defiance. And to anyone watching from the dark between stars, it delivered a quiet, unmistakable warning. This world learns. This world endures. This world is no longer easy prey. The message carved into stone. The signal did not announce itself with fanfare. There was no countdown, no dramatic surge of light, no warning broadcast to the public feeds. It began as a whisper, an unassuming fluctuation buried deep within the background noise of the universe. Only the hybrid systems tied into the crater noticed at first, their alien-human logic pausing in unison as something unprecedented occurred. The crater was no longer reacting. It was speaking. Dr. Ilara Miles froze as the data resolved into structure. "This isn't defensive telemetry," she murmured, fingers hovering uselessly above the console. "It's declarative." Commander Jax Moreno looked up sharply. "In plain terms, Doctor." She swallowed. "The system is broadcasting across interstellar space." The realization spread through crater control like a held breath. For 2 billion years, the ancient lattice had been silent, absorbing, stabilizing, waiting. Now, repurposed and reframed by human hands, it was doing something its creators had never intended. It was announcing Earth's survival. The message was not linguistic. It did not rely on symbols, words, or translation matrices. It was encoded in physics itself, patterns of space-time modulation, gravitational harmonics, and energy dispersion that any sufficiently advanced civilization would recognize instantly. Signature. A declaration of existence that could not be faked. Dr. Rhea Kincaid pulled the projection up, her face pale with awe. "It's describing the impact," she said slowly. "The energy levels, the survivability threshold, and the fact that the planet endured." Moreno felt a chill. "So anyone who receives this will know exactly what hit us. And that it failed," Miles added. The signal carried history compressed into undeniable fact, an extinction-level strike delivered with impossible force, a world that should have shattered, life that persisted anyway. It spoke of a planet that absorbed the blow, adapted, and, after billions of years, learned to wield the very mechanism meant to end it. It was a warning written into the bones of reality. Across Earth, observatories confirmed the broadcast. The signal spread outward at light speed, rippling through nearby star systems, imprinting itself on the cosmic background like a scar that could never be erased. Humanity had not sent ambassadors. They had sent proof. There was immediate debate, of course. Some leaders demanded the signal be shut down, fearing it would draw attention from forces far more dangerous than curiosity. Others argued it was already too late, that the moment humanity activated the crater as a shield, the universe had noticed. Dr. Miles stood before the Planetary Council, exhaustion etched into every line of her face. "We didn't choose to speak," she said. "The crater did. All we did was stop it from lying." The truth was undeniable. The ancient system had always been meant to communicate, not to those it targeted, but to its creators. A status report. A confirmation of successful sterilization. Instead, it now carried a contradiction. Target survived. Target evolved. Target is active. The philosophical shockwaves were as profound as the scientific ones. Humanity had always wondered whether it was early or late to the cosmic stage. Whether the universe was empty because intelligence was rare, or because something hunted it. Now they had an answer. Someone had tried to clean the galaxy, and Earth had slipped through their fingers. Moreno stood once more at the crater's edge as the first public acknowledgement of the signal went live. The scar glowed faintly in the dusk, not with menace, but with presence. He imagined the message racing outward, touching distant systems, some dead, some silent, some watching. "Think anyone will answer?" Solis asked quietly, standing beside him. He considered it. "Eventually." The message did not boast. It did not threaten. Did not invite. Simply existed. And that, perhaps, was the most dangerous thing of all. For any civilization that had relied on inevitability, on the certainty that emerging species could be culled quietly, efficiently, The signal was a nightmare. It meant the system had failed. Worse, it meant the failure had learned. Somewhere in the dark, ancient intelligences would receive the broadcast and recognize its implications instantly. The math would be clear. The conclusions unavoidable. Earth was not an accident. Earth was not fragile. Earth was a survivor of the greatest impact in its world's history. And it remembered. The crater became a pilgrimage site, not for worship, but for reflection. People stood at its rim and looked down into a wound older than humanity, knowing that everything they loved had existed on borrowed time, and had paid it back with interest. Children learned about the signal in school, not as a myth or a legend, but as a fact of citizenship in a dangerous universe. This is what happened. This is what we endured. This is why we prepare. The stars felt closer after that. Not friendlier but honest. In the quiet hours of crater control, Dr. Miles sometimes replayed the outgoing waveform, watching it propagate across simulated space. She felt no fear, only resolve. "We didn't challenge the universe," she said once late at night, to no one in particular. "We answered it." The message carved into stone and spacetime carried no human language, but if it could be translated into something simple, something any species could understand, it would read like this. "You tried to erase us before we knew your name. You failed. We grew. We remember." Far beyond Earth, the signal continued its endless journey, carrying with it the weight of 2 billion years of survival. And somewhere, sooner or later, something would hear it and realize the truth. Humanity was not born in peace. It was forged in catastrophe. And the universe had just been officially informed. The first reply did not arrive as a fleet. That alone told them everything. Crater Control detected it as a distortion riding the edge of the original broadcast. An echo folded back on itself, arriving from a direction no known civilization occupied. The signal was faint, cautious, layered with redundancies that spoke of fear rather than aggression. Something had heard Earth's message, and it was trying very hard not to be noticed. Dr. Ilara Miles stared at the projection, her breath slow and steady. "They're not attacking," she said. "They're confirming." Commander Jax Moreno felt a strange tightness in his chest. "Confirming what?" "That the system failed," she replied. "And that it wasn't just us." The decoded fragments were incomplete, but devastating in their implications. The ancient extermination network, the one buried beneath Earth's largest crater, had not been unique. It was part of a vast, distributed architecture seeded across the galaxy, designed to quietly reset worlds that crossed certain thresholds of intelligence. Earth had survived its test. Others had not. And a few, very few, had slipped through the cracks. The reply was not a threat. It was a confession. "We saw the scar. We assumed you were dead. You are not." Silence followed, heavy and absolute. Moreno walked out onto the observation deck, where the crater stretched below like a sleeping giant. Dawn was breaking, sunlight spilling across stone that had witnessed the rise and fall of everything humanity had ever been. "They're scared," he said quietly. "They should be," Solis replied, joining him. "So were we." No council vote was needed. No grand speech. Humanity's response formed naturally, shaped by 2 billion years of endurance and a single, undeniable truth. Survival meant responsibility. The outgoing message was shorter than the first. Harper. Directed not just at the distant sender, but encoded to resonate with every dormant node of the ancient network still hidden among the stars. It carried schematics, not of weapons but of overrides. Proof that the system could be broken. That inevitability was a lie. And it carried one final declaration. This world was marked for erasure. Endured. Any world that endures has the right to choose its future. The crater responded as the signal left Earth, its lattice humming with quiet approval. Not alien, not human, but something new born between them. The scar had completed its transformation. It was no longer just a shield. It was a beacon. Years passed, then decades. No armadas darkened Earth's skies. No gods descended in judgment. Instead, cautious contacts emerged. Fractured civilizations, survivors hiding in silence, drawn out by proof that resistance was possible. Humanity did not rule them. Humanity stood with them. Together, they mapped the dead zones of the galaxy, places where intelligence had once bloomed and been cut down. Together, they dismantled what remained of the ancient extermination architecture. Not with fury, but with precision, ensuring it could never be rebuilt. History would later argue whether the crater saved Earth twice, once by absorbing the impact, and once by teaching humanity what it meant to survive. Commander Moreno retired at the edge of the impact zone, where grass now grew among the ancient stone. Children played where gravity once broke bones. Birds nested where space-time had once screamed. One evening, as the stars came out brighter than ever, Dr. Miles joined him at the rim. "Do you ever think about what would have happened if it hadn't hit?" she asked. "If the crater never existed?" Moreno smiled faintly. "Then we wouldn't be who we are." They stood in silence, looking out at a wound that had become a promise. Far beyond Earth, the message carved into space-time continued to travel, unchanging, unignorable. Not a threat, not a challenge. Fact. The universe was vast, dangerous, and old. But somewhere within it was a planet that had taken a godlike blow, carried the scar for 2 billion years, and turned it into purpose. And now, whenever the ancient silence of space pressed too close, the answer was already there. Etched into stone, encoded in physics, impossible to erase. Earth endured. Humanity endured. And whatever came next would have to reckon with that.